Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the RockDaisy sports performance podcast where we decode the data, science, and stories powering elite athlete development. I'm Ron McKeefery, and in every episode, I'll be diving deep with top strength conditioning coaches, sports scientists, and performance experts who are driving the game forward using tech, insight, and grit. Hey guys, welcome back to Inside the Numbers. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and excited about having JC Hull on. JC is one of my former staff members. He went to the same college, was at Eastern Michigan with us, and gone off to do great things. He's at Lindenwood right now, has the head strength coach there, but been at UConn, Carolina Panthers, MU. I'm sure some other places in there. I can't remember, but man, excited to have you on the show, buddy.
Awesome. Appreciate the time, Coach.
What's JC? You've worked with some great mentors. I mean, you had Joe Ken at Carolina. You had Pat Ivey at Missouri. Brian Mann was there. Eric Klein, myself. Others. I mean, like you've had some really good mentors in there. What's the things that you took from each place that you use on a daily basis?
Yeah, so that's been a big part of my initial vision of coaching is just, as you already alluded to, yourself, all the rest of them. How do I take the amazing knowledge, the resources, and kind of put those puzzle pieces together in my own kind of program? I look at guys such as yourself. You taught me everything from a managerial standpoint, from a culture building standpoint, how to put your imprint on those aspects. Coach Klein, when I was at the University of Connecticut, he's a guy that I point to quite often as far as like the curiosity, the X's and O's. The guy was still, and is still, I guarantee you, learning in his journey. But I remember whenever I was there at UConn, he was actually getting a certification or a degree with like Westside and Louis. So like he had books upon books in his office all the time. Obviously, House developing the tier system, learning from him, getting that firsthand, that being a huge part of my program that I do in the weight room. And then whether it's B-Man and BBT or Coach Ivy, I joked around and talked with plenty of people. Coach Ivy was an amazing coach. He had an amazing staff, much like yourself when it came to managing. I think at that current time back in 2015, probably had 4 or 5 master strength coaches within the CSCCA underneath them, managing those coaches while letting them grow and do their own thing. And then half the time I saw the guy in a suit. So he was going off into administration meetings and probably building himself into the role that he has now, or he's at, I believe, at Louisville. So taking all those great attributes and being able to see those things firsthand is definitely helped me to get my start. And hopefully I've been able to, in my brief coaching career, expand some of those to my current athletes and the coaches I get to work with on a daily basis.
Well, we've had, we shared, you had Thomas Cornelius that was a staff member of GA for you, I think, and then an assistant for me at one point, and laying your own foundation that way. Lindenwood is kind of a cool place because it's, a school that's, that has changed levels in the time that you've been there, and you've had to kind of level up the team, level up the preparation for better competition, those types of things, but it has, in a lot of respects, limited resources. How do you kind of separate, because you've had experience with BBT, and you've had, from the best with Brian Mann, right? You've had the experience at Carolina, and even at Eastern Michigan, we had a really good nutrition room and resources that way. How do you separate needs from wants?
I think it's important. Something that you always told us as interns, make it a big time where we're at. And so like, regardless, whenever I got here, we were Division II and we've moved up to a Division I FCS within football. Obviously having those big picture goals, like we want to get the fancy new weight room. We want to get the 1080 sprints. We want to get the GPS units, which we've been able to get some of those things and like driving that. Like I'm always pushing that to my coach. And one lesson that I remember within like the first couple of months of the internship at Eastern, always having like a quick list that anytime like a coach or an administrator were to ask you like, hey, we've got this much money left over. Like, oh, well, this is an immediate need. Or like, we talk about things to make you whole and the wants and the needs that you've alluded to. So like, okay, like we're going to need to make sure that we're replacing the med balls, the bands, and the rest of that type of stuff. But outside of that, the next big picture is like, hey, my big project 2 years ago was getting GPS here. I knew that with us transitioning to that, having some of the data back science to be able to help lead some practices, it was a big hurdle. And even in my own coaching development, getting a chance to work with that technology. So always being prepared, kind of thinking of what are those new areas that we can grow in, being realistic. Like when it came to the VBT units, I knew we wanted objective feedback. That's a big part of my training, especially in my middle of the week in season sessions. I want to make sure that we're moving things fast. I don't just want to say, hey, move this faster. We want to have the objective data. So like, yeah, our quote unquote gold standard that I operated off, I like tether units, was the Tendo. We're not necessarily going to have that here, but hey, Rep 1 makes a pretty good little unit, or like the OVR, I think is another one that's still accurate and but a little bit more within our means when it comes to resources and budget. So I think having those experiences, being prepared with the make whole, the 1, 3, 5, if you will, as far as like the needs, that type of stuff. And then just always being in people's hip pocket. My football coach jokes around here quite often. He's like, I'm the most expensive coach on staff. And it's just like, well, coach, we say we want these guys bigger, faster, stronger. Well, this is something that's going to aid us. And then obviously you've got to be able to then do your part to say, this is how I'm going to make it a vital part of our program. It's not like I got GPS units and they just sit here in the corner. Like, no, he sees me each day laying them out. Like I'm sending them the reports. So, and all those things kind of wrapping up in a pretty bow. Be prepared, have your plan, and then make sure that they know that you're utilizing the equipment that you're asking for.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So what JC's talking about is I would go over a list with our staff that, I had 4 categories. I had make whole, which was if we had 12 racks and we had 7 TRXs, at 7 racks, we needed 5 more TRXs to make it whole. And get it to where every rack had a TRX or every rack had a Met ball or whatever it might be. And having that list on hand always to show that we're behind, was a good thing. But then the second column was needs. These are things that we feel like are fundamental to our program. Then we had major purchases, things that like, GPS if we didn't have it, or, if that wasn't if it wasn't already on the need list. And then we had kind of big picture items like a nutrition bar or something like that, And so, for example, on the big picture nutrition bar, without anybody's knowledge of me doing it, like I went out and just got a rendering done of what that would look like and put it up on an easel in the weight room. And then within like 6 months, we were starting construction on it because, AD would walk by a booster or somebody and I'd be like, yeah, that's what we hope to do. And it just kind of painted a picture of what could be done with the space that they weren't using, And so I think when you're prepared like that and you have 3 quotes to give somebody, or you have something, then you're showing you're a good steward of the money that you're getting.
And if I can just cut in, when we were doing that, because I remember this very well, you had like a corner room that we were going to use to stock all the nutrition product. And I think we had gotten the okay from the AD at the time that like, okay, you can take that room. It was less than 24 hours. We had all the junk removed. We had gone to Lowe's, Home Depot or whatever, bought the shelves and like had it completely renovated, if you will, just cleaned out and organized to where like, then I think, like I said, within 24 hours or 2 days, she walked in and we showed her. So I think the urgency component, which is something that I lean into from your teaching quite a bit, like, okay, once you get that, like act on it. And that's huge. And once again, just gets more buy-in from administration and the rest of the staff as well.
Yeah, such an important point. Yeah, I think, acting and not just, and people want to see a return on their investment right away, right? And so stuff like that makes that happen. What you said that you went from D2 to FCS now, and again, those resources that not necessarily always growing into additional staff members and that kind of stuff. Like, you've been in a room with Missouri, or even at Eastern Michigan, we had 10 interns, 12 interns every. How have you gone about kind of managing a big room with a small staff?
So once again, ton of credit to the coaches. I think first and foremost is obviously going to be communication with our guys. And you kind of alluded to it, big room. We have 20 racks. It's 10 double-sided racks. So while I can get like our entire team in here, just like we used to do with half the team at Eastern in that small space, I do tend to like to try to keep it close to 35 to 40 or so. But like managing the athletes, first and foremost, the guys we have here are awesome. I've got a great football staff that like recruits high character. So that always makes things a blessing to be able to work with. But from the opening of whatever the training session is, so like we're getting ready to roll June 1st. That Monday, if our first group is starting at 7, at 6:30, they've got a team meeting and I'm in there leading the team meeting. We're outlining what our late policy is, missed policy is. We're outlining what the expectation is as far as showing up 10 minutes early for your pre-lift. Your pre-lift is going to be 2 to 3 exercises. And then outside of that, you want foam roll, band stretch, hurdle, hip mobility. You're getting that stuff in, but just making sure that once again, if I'm expecting details out of the athletes, they're going to get a detailed approach with the training session, the organization. And yeah, it's not something that, like, especially taking over a program happens day one, but that is like something that I expect to see rolling through. And especially with like our newcomers, freshmen, or whatever else, it's also a great opportunity once you have a little bit of that culture developed through those details, that some of the older guys get a chance to kind of lean in. And like when you say you don't have a ton of coaches, I have myself, the system that works with me. And then most of the time outside of that, it's unpaid interns. I do want to lean into our guys and hopefully develop some leadership through those avenues as well. So communication is key. And I don't think you can ever do a great job of that. I can't tell you how many times I have a session. I might get frustrated with something. We get it corrected, but then I point right back at myself. Did I give the details? Did I thoroughly explain, hey, on these squats, we're looking for this meters per second, or did I clearly state, hey, we're actually looking for a touch go, not a pause on these squats? So making sure that that's there. And then secondly, just taking care of your people. Like my assistant Dom does an amazing job. And I want to give him the more, and I tell this to even our unpaid interns, the more that you show me that you're passionate and that like you want to do the task, that you want to work with the teams, then I'm going to give you additional responsibilities. And like since he started out with us as an intern, he was a GA, left for a little bit, came back now as an assistant. He's been a guy that like Saturday sessions or whatever else, I want to hand him the keys more for organizing our active recovery or things along those lines. So continue to have those people that show the passion and give them the additional responsibilities, delegate. I know that you spoke to that a ton as a form of developing our staff. So getting those tasks. And then, yeah, like it is what it is. We're going to have some unpaid help, but like, guess what? They're just like the athletes. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it. So like, you got to coach your coaches and get them up to speed. So hopefully your interns are just as much a avenue to show your ability as a coach as your athletes are half the time.
Hopefully we got a coach the whole you going, just like we had Coach Mackey going with the end. I have a financial advisor friend that he would always say that like you can't manage $1,000, you can't manage $1 million. And I think running small rooms with limited resources, or running rooms in general with limited resources, teaches you to be a good steward, teaches you how to sharpen your communication skills and your logistics and all the types of things that you need to do to be able to handle a big room, and those that only had experience with big rooms, all of a sudden you get thrown into something like that and you're not a very good strength coach. So I think it's important for people to learn and really study how to do that and learn from people like yourself that are doing it on a daily basis. You mentioned, like you have great players, and everybody has, everybody will say that about their, but typically it's kind of, again, it's like the bell-shaped curve with players, right? You got 10% early adopters, you got a bunch of guys in the middle, and you got, 10% that can be problem childs if not given the right framework and whatnot. How do you go about creating kind of buy-in with your athletes to where you're able to lean on them a little bit more from the management standpoint?
I think first, and I'll go back to the man himself who helped me get started. Building the buy-in is all about trust. It is all about time that I'm putting into the athletes. So like, if I'm going to ask them to be showing up 10 minutes early, or if I'm going to be asking them to be executing ABC, then like I, as the coach, better be doing my part to show that, oh yeah, you're going to show up 10 minutes early, but my entire staff's already been here. The weight room set up for you. Like we're ready to go. You do your weigh in. So the little things, the details that we harp on for the athletes, the exact same thing as the coaches. The next component of that is investing in their sport. Their whatever athlete for whatever sport they're playing. They're not Olympic weightlifters. They're not powerlifters. They're not here. A majority of them don't love the weight room as much as what we do. So investing in that field itself and showing them that a little bit about the game. I think that's like, it was helpful for me as a strength coach. Like football has always been what I played. It's been my passion. So like that's easy. But it was also nice for me to develop and work with some outside sports and like kind of reinvent or refigure out how to learn additional tasks for some of those other sports. So then I can almost take that back. Cause yeah, as you can probably assume, I'm not exactly a skill position player, but it helps if you can kind of get into the world a little bit to build a little bit of that buy-in. And then I think also, with that being said, be honest with who you are as a coach. Like I'm not going outside of my boundaries. I'm not trying to be somebody that I'm not. So like they know who I am, and I'm not acting like just because I've worked underneath Coach McKeefery or I've worked underneath Pat Ivy that I'm miniature one of those. So being who you are, building the trust through the little bit of the time, through the details, being about what you're preaching as much as not just saying it. It's not the do as I say, not as I do type mentality, those types of things. And I think just like I said, repetition over time and taking the extra opportunities outside of the weight room and outside of practice. Like that's why to me, like guys joke around with me about pre-lift or prior to the start of run, where I'm like, those are where all your conversations happen. Those are where you can get into some of the stuff that like outside of the X's and O's or whatever. And there's where you can get some buy-in with maybe some of your problem child. Like you're going to ask questions, you can get into those details and get to understand them as the person, not just as the athlete. And you don't run faster, you don't lift heavy, like figure out some of the inner workings, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. Only thing I would add to that is, creating competition and accountability in the weight room. I know you do the winter competition that we did and put your spin on it, create those things where there's that you try to find that opportunity for there to be pure accountability, carry so much more weight than anything that you would do for sure. But you've had to do, lots of creative solutions there. What are maybe 2 or 3 kind of creative solutions that you've had that maybe that others can learn from? I know you put
Also,
the RN, and
so we'll
things.
start. I guess I'll start with even like the nutrition station. You're getting creative with that. Whenever I started here, the head coach had mentioned that he wanted to do. I mean, once again, we're going back to Division II. Like we knew that was something that we wanted to start to build towards. And much like what you were speaking to with our nutrition station, we touched on with urgency. So like once I kind of got a little bit of like, okay, I'm going to have this budget to work with, whatever else. Okay, so we can do the chocolate milk, we can do the Uncrustables, but like, okay, we don't really have anywhere to store it. This station behind me was actually just like cubbies and like some places where athletes would put their bags, this and that. So I literally called up maintenance. It was like, hey, do we have any fridges, freezers, anything like that that's like not being used that in the dorm that we could utilize here in the weight room so that I can kind of start storing some product. And sure enough, they had 2 really old refrigerators that it took me like about an hour go through, deep clean everything and get it taken care of. But I mean, that's what we needed. That's how I was going to make it work. And then sure enough, I have a before and after picture of our nutrition station, which it could used to be expanded upon. But like I said, when you got just like some exercise bikes, some cubbies and whatever else, and these 2 fridges sticking there, and then you go to the coach and be like, hey, for recruiting, I want to be able to walk the athletes through this door and they see what we're looking at. And then fast forward, obviously, with a little bit of funds, this and that. So I think, like you said, starting the process, figuring out some of those, it might not be the shiny new toy, but it's going to be something at least like, okay, I can see the vision and build on that. And then the second part you alluded to with our like winter competition series, we didn't have like a huge board or anything along those lines. So I literally took one of our rolling whiteboards, and then my parents own a screen printing and embroidery shop. So we got some vinyl. I put that up there, just created my own competition board, went through, used Google Drive, Google Docs, all that stuff to kind of do my daily updates to share it with my coaches. And that's another way, back to our previous point, like, hey, you're an intern and you're helping me over the winter. Like you're going to learn how to give constructive feedback, because at the end of every single session, I'm expecting you to divvy out like 2 to 3 points, whether that's giving a guy a point or taking a point away. Like we're going to work on your coaching cues, because you're going to know like how to give actual feedback and cueing to the athletes we're going to ask those things from. So I'd say those are 2 off the top of my head. We've done like tire sleds like before, and like we've been able to upgrade our actual Rogue, like pulling tow sleds, this and that. But I think as you kind of talked about, just finding ways. I remember at Eastern Michigan, we went to, it was a construction site or something. We phoned around and we found like the tires, and we found like telephone poles or whatever else for a few like, for like a few special workouts that probably hid those away in a corner afterwards, but we made use of them.
That's right. I forgot about those. I forget. You mentioned those young interns and trying to give them lessons and grow them as coaches. What do you think is the biggest thing that those young coaches need to learn? Kind of the current state of the strength and conditioning profession.
It's cliche, but as we already alluded to a little bit, like the relationship component. I think everybody's going to say that, but the easy answer to that is the relationship component with the athletes. And then what I try to expand on with them, like, yes, get that taken care of. If you don't have that, you're not going to have anything else. But then I also speak to them as far as like, okay, like, what about like, are you considering your relationship with the actual sport coaches? Because there's going to be times where, and yeah, as an intern, you're like, well, how do I have a relationship with the sport coach? I wouldn't advise you to go up to a head football coach and like shake their hand and introduce yourself in the middle of a practice. But like there will be times, summer training, where we're doing OTAs and different organized, where like our head coach is a little bit different, to where he will go up and talk to him and introduce himself. Find a way to kind of start to at least put yourself out there and introduce yourself, the AT staff. And same thing, while you might not have a day-to-day interaction with them, but understand like that's going to be something in the future. So building yourself up for the job. So guess what? You better have a good background in terminology. You better have a background of mechanics, all that stuff, so you can speak their language a little bit. And then one of my good buddies, Anthony Grasso, when I was at University of Connecticut, he kind of got through to me. Like, I mean, shoot, even like the custodial staff, like the equipment managers, all those people, like the people, like as strength coaches, I think sometimes it's a woe is me. And I look at the sport coaches, like there's a lot of other people that are helping to take care of us too. So you better do a good job of taking care of them and building relationships just as much with them, because whether it's the custodial staff or the equipment managers, whatever else, you want the gear, you want to make sure the stuff's taken care of, like you take care of your people. So I generally, like within the first 2 weeks of our internship curriculum, like we'll talk about like expectations week 1, but week 2 is generally something along the topics of relationships, making sure they understand, yes, get in with the athletes and develop them, learn their names and do those types of things, because otherwise they don't care how much you know. But guess what? There's also these other added tiers that, like, part of my growth as a coach, when I went from intern to GA to assistant to head guy now here, was like each different role, like I got a new rung of the people that I would have to like learn how to build a relationship with. And so the earlier on, you might not be able to develop those relationships, but you can have that in the back of your mind. That's something you got to work towards. I think the better off that you're going to be as you can continue to build to where you want to be at.
Yeah, such a great point. Like, it's funny because you're right, because strength coaches in general will be like, oh, we're shit on by the football staff, or we're the least important when it comes to bowl bonuses and this, that, and the other, or whatever. But then you turn around and a lot of them will turn around and treat the janitorial staff or the equipment staff or their interns or whatever like crap. So it's like, treating people from the ground up the right way is great advice.
You want the cool social media posts? You better take care of your graphics people. Like, know them. Yeah,
that's exactly.
You can go anywhere with it.
Got some quick hitters here. What's the toughest thing about leading a department?
Want to take care of your people, but also wanting to give them chances to fail or to go on their own. Like you don't want to take too well care of them to never put them in danger, but also you want to let them have the opportunities for growth. Sure, I didn't word that very well. That's one that's stuck out to me a ton. Book by Jocko, The Dichotomy of Leadership. He stood out. He spoke to it obviously in the military terms. Like, you don't want to take too good care of your people to where you never put them in danger, because then you're never going to accomplish the mission. And if you just only care about the mission and the people aren't going to, and never show that you care about the people, then you're never going to get that buy-in in the relationship that you're looking for.
What's one thing that every young strength coach should kind of master outside of the relationship?
Outside of the relationships, I think that they should have a good proficient background knowledge of just like movement in general. Like that is our area. Like that's the weight room itself, the cueing, the X's, the O's, like that, like being able to speak some of those things. So relationships, the communication, cueing, that type of stuff.
What's the most important metric that you monitor to kind of know the success of your team?
I would say for us, it's generally our extra sessions that we end up having, especially like over the course of winter and summer. When we get into in season, depending upon our schedule, because we flip-flopped a little bit over the last few years, winter and summer, we'll have Saturday voluntary sessions for guys to come in and get that active recovery. In season, we would, when we were mandatory lifts on Monday, I'd have Sunday sessions to get kind of just a blood flow of 20 minutes or so. The attendance on that type of stuff to see how serious they're taking care of their body is something that I put a lot of stock in. And just outside of that, like, this is going to sound kind of like simple, or the chatter, if you will, like our guys like actually like popping around, moving around, like, or are they just dead quiet? Because their demeanor and being at those extra sessions can speak volumes. Like, it's awesome if you have everybody there, but if they're quiet as a church mouse and like they're just doing it because they know there's some kind of consequence, whatever else, then like it's kind of defeating the picture. But if they're there and they're having a good time, then like you got the best of both worlds. And I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What's a book or resource that you recommend every coach read or buy?
CEO, because obviously that was a big part. But as I just alluded to, I'm a big fan of Jocko as well. So Dichotomy of Leadership, because once again, I like this idea, looking at everything as a continuum, and you don't want to be too much to one side or too much to the other. So finding that balance in all aspects, I think, is pretty pivotal. That book was an awesome read.
It's awesome. Where can people stay up with you and follow what you're doing?
So just look it up, JC Hull SE on Instagram. Unfortunately, that's about the main of it. I'm not big into Twitter or some of the rest of those types of things. So I try to do a decent job of posting on there. But other than that, then obviously work email, any of that stuff. Be happy to answer any other questions or anything like that.
That's awesome, man. Well, JC has been a instrumental part of my staff through the years, and just a guy that I have a lot of respect for, man. It's easy to see why you're doing the positive things that you're doing, brother. So proud of you, man, and excited for where things go and continue to grow. And thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Appreciate the time. Thanks for having me, Coach.